I'd like to start this video by telling you a small story. Once upon a time, I was a quasi-homeless teenager runaway living on occasion on the streets of Portland, Oregon. I was around 16, 17 years old, and I would spend a lot of time in the Omega coffee shop in downtown Portland, Oregon. This is back in the 90s or late 80s. I met a couple who were much cooler than I was in pretty much every way. And the man from that couple, whose name has long since faded to the sands of time for me, smelled amazing. He had a personal scent that he had developed that I thought was just spectacular. And with a lot of cajoling and needling and a little bit of befriending, I managed to get him to give me that secret recipe for his secret scent that he never shared with anyone, he said. The recipe was, to the best of my long since faded memory, a base of patchouli and sandalwood, a top of apricot, and in the middle, possibly amber or dragon's blood as the scents. Over the years, I've done a number of variations on that basic recipe back when I was in my teens and 20s that I called Brazil, and I would have made at the local essential oil shop. I was quite fond of it, but it was never quite as good as the original. So I've decided now, in my 50s, to recreate that scent in a way that appeals to me the most. So I'll be taking all of my favorite scents and using that recipe as a skeleton to hang these scents off of. When developing scents, typically they're broken down into three categories: base notes, heart notes, and top notes. For my base notes, I will be using patchouli. I'm not sure. Oh, that's not going to focus. I'll be using patchouli, sandalwood, and possibly vanilla. These are all base notes that I have access to. For my top notes, I have tangerine and bergamot. These are both citrus fruits that make a nice, sweet, acidic top note. For my heart notes, my mid notes, I have cedarwood, which is also a base and a heart note. It's both. And violet, violet being one of my favorite smells in the world. Typically, you're going to want a certain ratio of heart and base notes to top notes. That ratio is 2 parts base, 5 parts heart, and 3 parts top note. Hello, and welcome to the second half of the first video on my journey to develop a personal scent. This scent I'm calling Slapstick for a number of reasons. But on the first portion of this video, we developed a base note. We tried a number of different combinations of base notes, including patchouli and sandalwood, patchouli and vanilla, patchouli, sandalwood, and vanilla. The winner ended up being patchouli and sandalwood on a 50-50 split as our base note. Our heart notes finally came yesterday in the mail, and we mixed those together off camera to try out a couple of different options. We're using cedar as one of our heart notes. Even though cedar is technically a base note, it also functions as a heart note to our understanding. So we're using it. It's a little bit sweeter than most base notes. So we're using a combination of cedar and violet at the moment. And we tried 2 different mixes, one with 4 parts violet to 1 part cedar, and one with 4 parts cedar to 1 parts violet, and the violet heavy combination won. After that, we tried building a top note out of the materials we have available at the moment, which are bergamot and tangerine. We also have some frangipani. I think I said frangipani last time. Frangipani coming in the mail hopefully today, but sometime this week, that we will attempt to mix in with our other top notes for the next batch of Slapstick. But for batch number 1 of Slapstick, for the top note, we've decided on the bergamot heavy version. So bergamot, tangerine. And so now we are going to mix our scent with an empty free bottle. We're going to start off with our base. for which we're going to put in, let's see, for the base, we need, I believe it's going to be in a 5 milliliter bottle would be 1 milliliter, or is it half a milliliter? Math can be difficult. It would be 2 drops of base to out of every 10 drops. So in a 1 milliliter, that would be 2/5. So in 5 milliliters, that would be 1 milliliter. So you want 1 full milliliter of base note, which in this case is going to be half patchouli, half sandalwood. So we're going to start with 2 milliliter. Sorry, half a milliliter. I'm going to get a little bit more in there. A little bit more. That does it. Half a milliliter of patchouli. I know a lot of people object to patchouli for aesthetic reasons as opposed to the actual scent being an issue. Their objections mainly being cultural. I don't have those personal objections. I've never had a problem with the concept of the fact that it used to be worn a great deal by hippies back in the day. I don't have those associations with it. Next comes the sandalwood. So I'm a fan of the patchouli. Okay, we're gonna do a half a milliliter of sandalwood. A little high there. Get a little bit more. Okay, that should be about right. That's about half a milliliter of sandalwood. We'll put in a little extra, half a drop there. Wonderful. That is our sandalwood. That is our base note complete. Next, we will go to our heart note. Our heart note will be 4 parts violet to 1 part cedarwood. I forgot to get those out beforehand. So the violet came in a tiny bottle, unfortunately, and the cedarwood came in a massive bottle. So we'll now add in, with a fresh dropper, our 4 parts violet. Which again, if we're doing 1 part is 2 drops. If 1 part is half a milliliter, we're going to want 2 full milliliters of violet. Is that right? Yep, 2 full milliliters of violet. Okay, that's 3/4 of a milliliter, followed by 3/4 of a milliliter, followed by half a milliliter. Half a milliliter of violet. Next, we're going to want half a milliliter of cedarwood to finish topping off our heart note, and supposedly it will connect it to our base note by having this in between heart note, base note right here. So we're going to go with half a milliliter of sandalwood. It's a very yellow oil. All right, that is our sandalwood in place. What that brings us to next would be our top notes. Our top notes are going to consist of bergamot and tangerine. 2 parts bergamot to 1 part tangerine. So bergamot we'll do first. That'll be half a milliliter of bergamot. There we go. Bergamot. Squeeze that down to half a milliliter. It's just about perfect. And if I've done my math right, which I may not have, we want 1/4 of a milliliter of tangerine. Bergamot needs another It needs another half a milliliter to make that appropriately strong. So, and if you feel like I've done the math horribly, please throw that in the comments and let me know. But it all really comes down to how it smells in the end. And while there is a degree of science in this, it is as much craft as it is anything else. And finally, half a milliliter. Oh, this is actually already measured for us. All right, half a milliliter of tangerine, if you'd be so kind. Tangerine is also a very colorful oil. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, that's perfect. Half a milliliter of tangerine. All right, setting that aside. Putting the appropriate lid on this bottle and the appropriate lid back on this bottle. All right, let's give this a good mix. Now it takes 24 to 48 hours for the scents to actually properly mix and combine and diffuse within the solution together. But I'm gonna give this a quick shake and see how it smells right now. And then we'll come back in a couple of days and see how it looks. Seems very sweet at the moment, but we did add the top notes in last, and the top notes are going to be the first part to evaporate. So we want that to really mix in. So yeah, like I said, we're going to leave that in a cool, dark place for at least 24 hours, and then we'll come back and check on it again. Thank you for joining me on this edition of Slapstick by Gherkin Picklewater, where I attempt to produce my own scent. I hope you'll join me again in the near future. Thanks. Bye-bye.